Welcome to Sunday morning at the Marxist Library. A quick note before we start, this session is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube with a link on our website, ICSSmarx.org, within the next few days. And again, welcome everyone to Sunday morning at the Marxist Library. We are based in Oakland, California, and have been offering Sunday morning sessions for over a decade and a half. My name is Alan Miller, and I'm a member of the program committee that organizes these Sunday morning sessions. You can sign up for email notifications, including a Zoom link for our sessions, at our website, ICSSmarx.org, where you can also contact us. We want to remind everyone that this is a comradely forum for political discourse and debate, and as such, we ask that you show respect to other participants and to the moderator of today's session. Please note that the opinions expressed are those of the speaker and participants, and they do not represent necessarily those of the ICSS or the Marxist Library. Have a kind of a special introduction this morning. As we're meeting today, a ruthless, savage war is being waged by Israel and the United States on the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank. The carpet bombing of Palestinian neighborhoods by the Israeli military has killed over 7,000 Palestinians, 1,000 of which are innocent children, and over 1 million people have been made homeless. Water, food, and electricity have been cut off to a population of over 2 million people, half of whom are children. We are deeply saddened and angered by this. While this is happening, there's also an unprecedented information war that is being waged, with internet service and telecommunication services being cut off by the Israelis and a virtual media blackout here in the US in an attempt to hide the genocide that's taking place in Gaza. In doing our part, fighting in this information war, we are fortunate to have Nora Barrows-Friedman of the Electronic Intifada speaking this morning. The Electronic Intifada is a website that can be accessed at electronicintifada.net. It's one of the best sources of up-to-date and accurate information about the struggle in Palestine. Nora is a journalist, editor, radio broadcaster, musician, and mother. Since 2012, she has served as an associate editor and audio production director for the Electronic Intifada. And she is also the author of Our Power, U.S. Students Organized for Justice in Palestine, which is published by Just World Books in 2014. Our topic today is Combating Liberalism, the Information War in Gaza. We're going to start with a two short videos, followed by Nora's presentation, and then a short break for announcements, followed by Q&A from participants. So let me go ahead and set up this short video, if you'll bear with me for just a moment. And please interrupt me if you can't hear, Raj.
Does it really surprise you? Is it really a shock that a couple of days ago, the people of Gaza, most of whom were born in that concentration camp, they were born into it. Does it really shock you that they would do something desperate to break free of that concentration camp? And who dare criticize whatever tactics they employ? I don't know what I would do if I had been born into a concentration camp and spent 20 years of my life there. Who are the young people who joined Hamas? If they were given an opportunity in life, if they were given a chance, if they were able to breathe, I don't know if they would have joined Hamas. Most of these young people are at the point where they're willing to just sacrifice their life because the situation is so hopeless. They have no other options. They have no other choices. And this is the question that we must constantly ask ourselves. What were their options? Periodically, Israel launches these brutal criminal assaults on Gaza. Medical personnel were targeted, journalists were targeted, people with disabilities were targeted. Is it really a shock that it deteriorated and ultimately failed in its goals, in its objectives, to end that brutal, inhuman blockade of Gaza? Does it really surprise you? Is it really
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I just wanted to say to any Muslims in the West and to any sane, decent human being in the West who supports Palestine and who supports the Palestinian cause, don't let them try to get you on the back foot. You need to put them on the back foot. You know, they're trying to ban pro-Palestinian protests, pro-Palestinian demonstrations, and any public expressions of support for the Palestinians. They're trying to box you in. They're trying to put you in a corner. They're trying to intimidate you and bully you into accepting their disgraceful narrative, their shameless and really demonic endorsement of genocide in Gaza. They want to vanish the Palestinian cause from public discourse. They want to erase Palestine from the intellectual, cultural, political discourse. They want to expel Palestinians even from the territory of discussion, just as they want to expel Palestinians from their geographic territory. You cannot allow this to happen. Look, the entirety of the global South supports Palestine, and that's most of the people on the earth. The overwhelming majority of people on this planet support the Palestinians. So don't let them make you believe that you're some sort of fringe minority because you support the Palestinian cause. You
Okay, Nora, if you would go ahead and welcome, warm welcome to Sunday morning at the Marxist Library. Thank you so much for coming this morning and presenting.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I just to repeat what Alan said, I'm a journalist, broadcaster. I've been working at the Electronic Intifada since 2010 as an editor, and I host the podcast, and we're now doing live streams every few days. And yeah, I've been reporting on Palestine. This is my 21st year now, and I still feel like a rookie in many respects. But I used to work at KPFA, and that's really where I got my journalistic chops. And so, I mean, it's what we're seeing. I mean, I my brain is like oatmeal right now. We've been working around the clock the last 3 weeks, obviously trying to document everything that's been happening and providing analysis and context, which is, you know, always missing when we try to you know, figure out what's going on, and we're just looking at corporate mainstream media. But I wanted to kind of talk about the thread of what, you know, Norman Finkelstein was saying, and then the second video as well is like, you know, the process of dehumanization against Palestinians, not just over the past 3 weeks, but over the past 75 years, over the past century, really, since Zionist colonial projects began in Palestine. What we're seeing now is this real acceptance of a genocide and the manufacturing of consent for that by this constant dehumanization of Palestinians, by the way in which you know, the so-called progressives in the U.S., especially the ones inside the halls of power, are condescending at best and atrociously racist at worst, when it comes to trying to understand. They don't even try to understand, but when it comes to trying to talk about who Palestinians are, especially the ones inside the besieged concentration camp of the Gaza Strip. And what Finkelstein mentioned, there's like this urge to paint all Palestinians as bloodthirsty, maniacs, barbarians, savages, for fighting back against their ruthless occupiers and colonizers. And we see this, even in looking at my own social media and people who otherwise would have very good stances on things, Black Lives Matter and, upholding gay rights, and we're, marching for women's reproductive freedom and all of this. There's still this urge to say, we can defend and stand in solidarity with Palestinians without supporting Hamas, right? There's still this urge to separate and condemn a resistance organization, what we say the Palestinian Defense Forces, in order to somehow have this this virtue signaling, very American, very liberal, condemnation of the act of resistance, while still, purporting to be in solidarity with Palestinians as a whole. Also, what this does is it marks Palestinians as separate from their desire to resist, and separate from their support of those who are resisting the colonization. And so I want to just kind of, invite people to push back on that when you see it happening, on Facebook or Instagram or in conversations with people. What is that urge about? Where does it come from? This desire to see Palestinians as in conflict and in contradiction with this armed faction that is the only barrier, between Israel's complete annihilation of their people and their communities. I think it's steeped in racism. It's steeped in this, performative liberal tactic of needing Palestinians to be the perfect victims, needing them to be always on the defense in order to elicit solidarity and sympathy and empathy from the West. And it is abhorrent, I think, when we look at it from a revolutionary standpoint, to try and separate Palestinians from those who are defending them, who come from their families, who come from their communities. And it is, it's Orientalist to gaze, at Palestinians saying, well, we don't support their tactics, or we have to condemn Hamas before we can say Palestinians need liberation. How are they going to achieve liberation? How has any colonized, subjugated, occupied population throughout history achieved liberation? They don't achieve it by appealing to the moral, consciousness of the occupier. I look at, I think about Algerians fighting the French, and how they were labeled as terrorists, and, the atrocities that they committed against the French were awful. Trying to condemn the Algerians for rising up against their occupiers. The same with, the ANC in apartheid South Africa. I mean, Nelson Mandela was jailed for 25 years because he refused to renounce armed struggle. And he was labeled, obviously, a terrorist. And we look at, I mean, I always also think of this country where we have, where it was founded on the genocide and ethnic cleansing of the indigenous population, who were also branded as savages and barbarians and terrorists for taking up arms against the European colonizers. And I think of enslaved people on this continent who also took up arms and killed their enslavers and were labeled as terrorists. And of course, after slavery was legally abolished, it just kind of transferred into mass incarceration up till now. After slavery was legally abolished, there was this anxiety within the settler population, of course, that the people who they had enslaved would take up arms and kill them. And so what did we see form after that? That was the KKK. And the police, which was formed, from the foundations of slave catching militias. And so we see the same, these same like descriptions being trotted out. And we also see how, how these deep-seated settler anxieties are also being held up as like, more valuable than the suffering and the resistance of Palestinians. I mean, just yesterday I was watching a video of Palestinian citizens of Israel who were at who live in a dormitory at a university in the north. And there was literally an Israeli lynch mob outside on the campus grounds, trying to break into the dormitory to literally lynch these Palestinian students. And so that's like a perfect correlation between like what has happened now, what's been happening for the last 75 years, but with the this like very aggressive, exaggerated, kind of green light that the Israeli government has given to the settlers to lynch anybody on site, to, gather up more arms. We saw the Israeli minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's an outright genocidal fascist, literally handing out weapons to already heavily armed settlers. And I think about that, and I think about the KKK, and I think about the silence of liberals here in this country who either don't want to think about what's happening in Palestine, think that they have nothing to do with it, think that it's a millennia old clash of civilizations and it's a religious conflict, all of those tropes that are meant to dilute and obscure what's actually happening. And I think about those who are not speaking out against what Israel has already is, which is an illegitimate settler colony built on the ruins of Palestinian villages from 1948, and how Palestinians, especially in Gaza, as we've seen over the last 3 weeks, this is this didn't come out of a vacuum. The calendar didn't begin on October 7th. This was a natural outcropping of people besieged and sealed inside a concentration camp, 2.3 million people who are exhausted and who have been left to fight alone and who have been viciously dehumanized. And so when we hear of, the Biden administration you know, ignoring or dismissing the body count in Gaza, which has just today surpassed 8,000 people, 3,500 of whom are children. When they dismiss it as, well, Hamas makes up numbers, right? As, and saying that, we can't trust anything that Hamas says. Of course, the Gaza's, the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza has released all the names and the ages, and they continue to release these just interminably long lists of people who have their names and their age and the population registry number, like kind of like their driver's license number or social security number. It should infuriate all of us, and it should really point to this sickness that we are forced to digest by the Democrats, the so-called lesser of two evils. If this is the lesser of two evils, I don't know where we go from here. But just to kind of, I just want to bring home, just to really emphasize the point that it does the Palestinians no good to condescend their means of resistance, to take some sort of position of moral authority from our comfortable homes here in the Bay Area, to shake our finger at, Hamas is, a fanatical Islamic organization, and we can't support them, and I don't support what they did, and they should have just asked nicely, and the Palestinians should have just died quietly. That's what Palestinians are hearing when we condemn their decision to resist and the way that they resist. And so I'm kind of, even though I understand where it comes from, because that's what Americans have consumed in terms of, the corporate media's line, and we can only kind of donate our empathy if the actions of whoever is resisting are deemed pure enough. I understand that, and I want to encourage people to interrogate that as leftists and as Marxists, built on the, we know our history, we know the theory, we've read Fanon, we've read Lenin, we've read, and now is the time to really put those teachings into practice and into praxis, especially when we talk about and discuss what's happening in Palestine and to Palestinians. So I'll leave it there. I'm really interested to have a discussion and to answer questions, and kind of see where we can go as leftists, and as people who support revolutionary politic from here. So yeah, so that's those are my remarks. I did not have time to prepare much more because I've just been working nonstop, but I think those are some of the salient points that I wanted to make. And so I want to invite people to ask questions and have a discussion. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Nora. I had to unmute myself.
Oh, yeah.
And turn on my video. What we're going to do now is we're going to have a few short announcements, followed by Q&A and discussion from the audience. So if you would like to ask a question, make a comment, please go down to the bottom of your screen, the reactions button, and raise your hand. We'll try to take people in a reasonable order, but please, we'll get to everybody we can. Keep your comments and questions to about 2 minutes, and we'll give Nora a chance to respond when appropriate. Just let me make a few quick announcements. We have some really excellent programs coming up. Let's see, next week we have a speaker from Great Britain. We have Jyoti Brar from the World Anti-Imperialist Platform and Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist, who will be speaking on the theory of the imperialist pyramid. There's this international debate that's broken out worldwide among communist parties on Lenin's theory of imperialism, a very important topic, as we can see from today's session. And tune in to hear Jyoti Brar, very distinguished speaker, internationally known speaker on this topic. The following week, we have Al Sargis speaking on, is the U.S. headed for low-intensity civil war? Be talking about the activities of the grassroots, quote unquote, right organizing in the U.S. today. Followed by, on November 19th, the Monroe Doctrine after 200 years. Mark Albertson, frequent contributor to the library, will be speaking on the history of the Monroe document and what's going on today. We urge everybody to go to our website, ICSSmarks.org, sign up. There'll be a pop-up that'll greet you after a couple of seconds. You can put in your name, your email address. You'll receive weekly notifications of our meetings, along with a Zoom link to attend. You can also view past programs and send us a message using the contact form on our website, and also make a donation to support our activities. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to shift over to the Q&A part of our session. We'll go about an hour or so on this. And again, raise your hand if you have a question. I want to encourage everybody to please feel free, feel comfortable to chime in, raise questions, comments as you see fit. So I'm going to start with Janet Cobran. So Janet, if you would unmute yourself, please, and ask your question. Janet.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nora, for your presentation and all the wonderful work you do.
Thanks, Janet.
You might remember me from
Of course.
Been a passenger on the 2010 Gaza Freedom Flotilla and
Yeah.
work in KPFA and Pacifica governance. Anyway, I have two questions. My first question has to do with something I read online today, and actually it was posted a couple of days ago, about Israel passing a law allowing its commanders to have permission to open fire on protesters there.
Mhm.
Are you aware of any martial law in Israel now? That's first. My second question has to do with the second video Alan played. The speaker was Shahid Bolson. He's found at Middle Nation Channel. I'm wondering if you're familiar with his work and would you consider interviewing him? He lives in Malaysia. He speaks as a Muslim and claims he speaks for Muslims as a whole. I have no idea if that's the case, but I've been finding his positions and arguments very compelling, especially that entire podcast from yesterday, in which he lays out the case that Israel does not have a right to defend itself, and the Palestinians have a right to resist occupation, including by armed struggle, and that both the US and Israel are outlaws, he calls them. I'll post the link to that entire podcast, and including a quote from the 1982 UN General Assembly Resolution 3743, which allows a colonized people to use armed struggle to liberate themselves. Mm-hmm. As well as another one from Bolson, and where he likens the US to a cult needing to be deprogrammed. And then I'll post that other article about Israel allowing the killing of its own citizens.
Yeah,
So,
thanks for that, Janet. I did read that same article or another one like it, talking about Israel about to pass that law. I mean, it's yeah, I don't see where it would be any different from what they do anyway. Israel has, I mean, we see this is specifically about protesters inside the state. But as we know, for decades and decades and decades, Israel has had a shoot to kill policy, or at least a shoot to maim policy, in the occupied West Bank and Gaza Strip. I mean, this all points, I mean, if we look at the kind of like the larger context here, I mean, this is a failed state policy. This is a policy of a government that only knows the language of violence and death. And they're prepared to eliminate their own citizens. I mean, we see this happening on the battlefield as well. It's called the Hannibal Directive, which is a policy that the Israeli army has used in the past, especially in Lebanon, where instead of allowing Israeli soldiers and citizens to be captured by Palestinian resistance groups, they are allowed in its own military policy to shoot to kill the Israeli captives in order for them not to be used as bargaining chips in an eventual prisoner swap. So this is also, I mean, the fact that a government would allow members of its, vaunted military to be killed by its own military in order to prevent them being captured tells you something. And so Israel has always been willing to sacrifice its own in order to fulfill the bigger goals of the nation state. So this is just kind of like a continuation of that. I didn't know about Shahid Bolson before Alan sent me that video. I think I'm always, what he said was great, and I agreed with it. I'm always very wary of people purporting to speak on behalf of an entire global community, whether it's Muslims or, of course, we see how the Israel lobby groups purport to speak on behalf of all Jews everywhere. So that, is I think it's, I don't understand the utility in doing that as somebody, but what he said was great, and I'll continue to watch his videos. Yeah.
Okay. Next up is Raj, followed by Steve. So Raj, if you would unmute yourself.
Okay, Nora, thanks for your presentation.
Yeah.
I agree with what you were saying. I just wanted to, since the topic is how liberals in the United States have become accomplices of this war, which is a war, is a proxy war. The United States is the power behind Israel. So I want to, and oftentimes liberals and a lot of people use Gandhi's name. So I just wanted to say something about what Gandhi actually said.
Yes.
He opposed the formation of Israel in 1945. That is just after the end of the war, with horrendous killing of Jews, and that was coming to light. He still took the position that it should not be formed. He said the giving justice to one set of people who have been abused or at the cost of another is unjustified. So that's first thing I want to, for those who think Gandhi was, who don't know about it, I want to make it clear. Second thing is often Gandhi is associated, and he was a great proponent of nonviolent resistance. Okay, but Gandhi made it clear that fighting justice is injustice is most important, and if you cannot use or you're unable to use nonviolence as a means, violence is justified. This is Gandhi himself. So, as you said, and as I wish Finkelstein's video was not speeded up, but what Norman Finkelstein, who spent a lifetime at great sacrifice, personal sacrifice, to expose the violence of the Israeli state on Palestinians, who I believe are the Jews of today, whereas Israelis have become not the Nazis, but Nazi-like as a state towards Palestinians. And that has to be opposed. And yes, Hamas has every right to use every tactic. And to make this as a terrorist organization is basically to deny Palestinians any right to resist.
That's right.
And I think their model is the West Bank. And they want to do the same thing to Gaza, if not expel all of them. So thank you very much. Those are the comments I wanted to make. You may comment on any part of it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's also like a very, American liberal thing to do, is to say, oh, why can't they be more like Gandhi? Why can't they be more like MLK? Why can't they just, sit around and sing Kumbaya? Again, like this very distorted view of what actually like Gandhi and MLK and Mandela stood for, which is a very American thing to do. But also, like, nobody's ever telling the Israelis to be less violent, to stop carpet bombing. Why can't, nobody's ever looking at the indoctrination of Israeli society, which, and the Zionist project as a whole worldwide, which teaches Jewish people, I know from being an American Jew, luckily I grew up in an anti-Zionist household, but a lot of my peers and comrades had to fight through the fog of indoctrination. I know that, there is, in their communities and their families, there's this incredibly racist indoctrination where, Palestinian, they're called Arabs, right? They're not even given the name of Palestinians, where Arabs are bloodthirsty Jew killers, and Israel has to defend itself from a dangerous neighborhood sort of thing, and at any chance they get, Arabs are going to come and they're going to kill little Joshi at the JCC on Shattuck Avenue. I mean, it's completely deranged and demented, and it is a deliberate strategy by lobby groups and by protectors of the Zionist ideology to keep Jews, American Jews and Israeli Jews, in perpetual fear, in perpetual, anxiety, and to channel that fear and that anxiety into a military genocidal response. And so, when they say, like, why can't they be more like Gandhi? I mean, this is every time Palestinian, a friend of mine who was born in a refugee camp says, every time Palestinians open their eyes, that's nonviolence. Every time Palestinians take care of their kids, that's nonviolence. Every time a Palestinian, takes a car to go across checkpoints, to get to work, to get to school, to get to their place of worship, that's nonviolence. Nobody ever talks about that. And also, like, Palestinians have tried oh, thank you. My beautiful son just gave me breakfast. Thanks. Palestinians in 2018, of course, for months and months and months, they did the traditional kind of, European vision of nonviolence, where Palestinians in Gaza, initiated and organized the Great March of Return in 2018, where hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people every Friday, they would march to the boundary along Gaza, and they were wearing their traditional clothes, and they, sang songs, and they played games, and they flew balloons, and they did these like teach-ins, and they did sit-ins, and they did these incredible, so-called nonviolent protests. And what did Israel do? It sent caravans of Israeli snipers to the hilltops around Gaza, and they just picked people off one by one. Hundreds of Palestinians were killed with shots to the head, and thousands, I think it was 4,000 people were injured. I mentioned the deliberate shoot to maim policy. There was a policy, a directive given by the Israeli commanders to shoot people in the kneecaps so that they would never be able to walk again, right? We saw the sniping of paramedics and journalists and children. So they've tried, they've also done the boycott, divestment, and sanctions call, which was modeled on the South African anti-apartheid movement call to again, using these non-violently, resist Israel's economic, cultural, and academic subjugation by refusing to buy products, by refusing to host, Israeli government funded art installations at museums and dance companies, and also to try and get, universities and academic institutions all over the world to sever their ties with Israeli institutions, especially the ones that are involved in research and development of weapons that kill Palestinians. So all of these, and that is a vaunted nonviolent tactic, but that's not okay. So they can't march nonviolently, they can't boycott nonviolently. And in terms of like, where's the Gandhi? I mean, Ahmed Abu Artema, who's a friend of ours at the Electronic Intifada, he was one of the main organizers and co-founders of the Great March of Return. He is a Palestinian refugee. He's a poet and a writer. And 5 days ago, we couldn't get in touch with him for the last, for about 2 or 3 days. We couldn't, and this was before the electricity or the internet and cell signals were cut. We couldn't get in touch with him. We were scrambling, and then finally we got a message from another colleague in Gaza saying that Ahmed is alive. He's in critical condition. 5 of his family members, including his 12-year-old son, were killed in an Israeli bombing of their house, right? So they're killing the would-be Gandhis that would somehow elicit empathy and sympathy from the West. What are Palestinians supposed to do? And how many people do they have to kill in order for the Biden administration or liberals here in the West say it's enough? We don't know the number. Obviously, there's a number somewhere, but we don't know that. And meanwhile, people, Israel is carpet bombing using American missiles, the people who would be held up as as the Gandhis of Palestine, if that's even if that would even make a difference in the first place.
Okay.
Someone has asked in the chat for quotes about Gandhi's allowance of violence, if anybody is able to respond.
Norma, but let's do that in the chat. Go ahead and put that note in.
This is the dialogue.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think next we're going to have Steve, and I'm going to actually ask Yusuf after that because I know Yusuf has to leave. So Steve, if you would unmute yourself and make your comment, followed by Yusuf.
Okay, thank you, Nora. That was very good to hear. And thank you for starting with the relation to what has happened to the indigenous on this continent, and including Fanon in your references. When the attack first started my first feeling was, this is Nat Turner.
Mm-hmm.
He and his followers didn't care if they were going to be killed. They knew that others were going to be killed, and there was nothing else to do. That is part of our tradition. It's part of the way we try to forget who we are and where we come from. The next thing I thought about, given Israeli response, was this was their opportunity to institute their final solution.
Yeah.
And I had been thinking that they had been going toward that for a long time. And we're going to either set it up or do it anyway. But somehow it has now come to my attention that it's only superficial to equate what Zionism and what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians with the Nazis. And putting it together with the blanket censorship of discussion on the Palestinians that has been going on for the last 20 years in the United States. I think we have to go deeper.
Yeah.
So the third thing that has occurred to me is when the United States tried to flatten Vietnam, killing over 4 million people, what they were saying to the national liberation movements of that time, you want your liberation? This is what you're going to have to pay for it. It was a direct statement to all the people of the world. You want your liberation? This is what you're going to have to pay for it. And I have a funny feeling that these come together in what Israel is now doing to Gaza and to the people of Gaza.
Thank you, Steve. Nora, actually, we have quite a few people have their hands raised. Did you have a final point you wanted to make?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I do want to bring it back here.
Go ahead.
Over the last 6 or 7 years, the number of people, mostly people of color, that have been shot and killed by police in the United States has been around 1,000. That comes to 3 a year, 3 a day, 3 a day. You bring up the idea of the populist radical right, the white supremacist right. And there are now Black communities that are talking seriously about what that means. People like Kali Akuno and the others in Jackson, Mississippi, for instance, are preparing themselves, ideologically at least, for a civil war.
So, Steve, I think what we actually do need to move into the next question, but I appreciate it. Nora, do you have a response?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that this is all, it's all very interconnected.
I have a couple more sentences I would like to make.
Maybe
Okay, go
maybe
ahead.
if you can put them in the chat, that would be better, and then I can kind of and then I can read them and answer them after the next question.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, next would be Yusuf. Please unmute yourself, followed by Jean. So go ahead, Yusuf.
Yes, thank you, Nora, for a very wonderful presentation. Thank you, Raj. Also, the West Bank has become unsustainable as well, Palestinians, and this is what caused the outburst. They were Palestinians killed almost every day by Israeli settlers being to drive them off, whatever, killed or bullied, to drive them off whatever land remains to them, and creating mini Gazas in places like Jenin. I'd also like to thank Raj for bringing up Gandhi, and just as the partition of Palestine was a tragedy, so was, I think, partition of India, and I think many Pakistani, many Pakistani comrades and friends agree on that. And the British have a long record of creating these long simmering conflicts in areas they once controlled. Well, starting with Ireland and also Cyprus. These are the footprints, former footprints of the British that have made an art of divide and rule.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the last, millennia of British colonialism has really done a number around the world. Absolutely. Absolutely. And people are, people have been fighting back since the beginning. And they continue. And now that, the UK empire is waning, and I would say the same for the US empire. They're unfortunately, like, when empires don't go quietly into the night, they fight like wounded animals to keep their hegemony, and I think that's what we're seeing right now.
Okay, next is Jean. If you would unmute yourself, followed by Citizen of the Planet. So Jean, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks so much, Nora, for both for all the work you do and for being here with us today and taking time out to talk to us. It's really been a great pleasure and enlightenment. And I just want to say I'm wearing my Veterans for Peace cap today, and we're an organization for the abolishment of war. And one of the things we do is criticize our own government and the military, diplomatic, financial support that Israel receives from the United States. And there are two, U.S. aircraft carriers sitting right off the coast of Gaza. And I believe they've have a striking force of 2,000 Marines to be involved there. So that's horrible. And so that's one comment I'd like to make. But the other thing, a couple of questions. One is, I have heard people question the degree to which the people of Gaza actually support the resistance of Hamas, and also linked into that, to what extent do the people of Israel support their government? And then I heard there's this expression, Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. And I listened to this one woman that's carrying a big rant saying, oh, they're calling for the genocide of Israel. And she was went on and on for, I couldn't listen to the whole thing. Yeah. But it's just that that seemed like a weird interpretation of that.
Yeah, to say the least.
So the two questions, one about the public opinion, but also if you want to comment on that, I don't see it as a call for genocide, and I doubt that you do either. So
No.
But again, thank you so much.
Thank you. And yeah, the just like the absurdity of saying that from from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. To interpret that as a call for genocide of Jews. I mean, you really have to wonder, like, if what Palestinians are demanding and have been demanding for the last 75 years is the right to return to their homes and the right to live, to choose for once in their life where they can live, and the right to move as equal people once again. Before 1948, Palestinians included Muslims, Christians, and Jews, and atheists, and agnostics, and Armenians, and Moroccans. And it was a place that for thousands of years had a very cosmopolitan populace, where people were, especially in the last 200 years, people lived as equals. They, I mean, mothers, all these stories that you hear of before 1948, what it was like in Palestine, where Jewish mothers would breastfeed the babies of her Muslim neighbor, and vice versa. People would come over and celebrate each other's holidays. People lived as equals. Nobody was taking anybody else's land or kicking anybody out. And then 1948 happened. And all of a sudden, European colonizers said, this is not your house anymore. You have to leave. And who would not resist that? Who would just be like, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going to leave my house that I built and the land that, for 2000 years, my family has been living on. Yeah, you're right. Okay. It's insane. And it's very European to think that, that Palestinians, would not fight. Like, it's so Orientalist and deranged, that people would not have this, anger of being kicked out of their land and told that they cannot go back because they are the wrong religion. And there is a settler, from Belgium living in their house, and they can do nothing about it. And so the phrase from the river to the sea, right, means that, like, Palestinians who have been denied the most basic rights of all, will one day be able to access and implement those rights. And if that means the destruction of a state to have equal rights for everybody living in that land, then that state has no right to exist. And that Israelis see equality for everybody living in that piece of land as the destruction of their state is really, like, it's very telling. And to then personalize it and try to weaponize that into saying that the Jews will be pushed into the sea, this other adage that they like to use, is also deranged and a very telling psychological projection, because literally, who is being pushed into the sea? Who was pushed into the sea in 1948? It was Palestinians. They, there are photographs and videos of Palestinians literally being pushed into the sea when the Zionist invaders came into what's now called Israel. And they were pushed, and either pushed north up the beach to Lebanon or pushed south down the beach to Gaza or Egypt. And so that, I mean, it's this also, like, the weaponization of Judaism itself to center Jews as the ultimate and the only victims in all of this. And that any calls for Jews to be equal and not supremacist is somehow a genocidal intent. It is demented. And it speaks to the, again, like this indoctrination and just the disgusting nature of what Zionism is, when Jews have been living in Palestine for millennia, as equals, right? It's just the Zionists that never wanted that, and who have weaponized Judaism and Jewish identity in order to fulfill these colonial fantasies of a nation state.
And public opinion, especially
Public opinion, I mean, it's of no consequence to us. We have no right to tell Palestinians who they can and can't support. Palestine, the reason, I will say that the reason that Israel and the subcontractors of the Israeli occupation, the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, the reason why they have refused to hold elections in 17 years is because they know that Hamas would not just win again in the Gaza Strip, of course, but that it would also win in the West Bank, and the PA's quisling, Vichy government leadership would be done. Israel doesn't want that. Palestinian Authority doesn't want that, and the US doesn't want that. So they've just, they've canceled elections indefinitely. But yeah, I mean, we can't impose our Western framework of what government should be and what it's not, and the right way to support something, or these very pure, these purity politics onto people who are being actively carpet bombed. I don't see the utility. I don't see how that benefits Palestinians. They can vote for whoever the hell they want to vote for. This is not our place to tell Palestinians the right way to vote, right? Again, this very conditional support. Well, if only they didn't support Hamas, then I would give them solidarity and I would empathize with their plight. I mean, that is what would Fanon say about that, right? And then in terms of Israel, I mean, Israel keeps electing governments that are genocidal and more fascist than the other. And they have vaunted these Kahanists who, have this messianic, absolutely deranged, fascist fanaticism into the highest echelons of the government. And actually, for me and for a lot of my colleagues, it's the mask is off. It just shows how honest Israel has always been. It shows the real intentions without having to put this liberal veneer over, Ehud Olmert was a dove compared to Netanyahu. They're all genocidal. Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and all these people, they're just more honest about it. They don't have anything to hide. They're not trying to appease, Western liberal values. They're just honest. And they have every right to be, because they've never been held to any account whatsoever. There's never any, they act with complete impunity. So why would they not say, we're going to turn Gaza into a parking lot? We want to kill and kill and kill. And that's how, this is what people say. So I think, in terms of how do we gauge the support of people politically? I mean, you have to take it out of the Western vacuum thought and look at the actual context. And also, it's not our right to tell an occupied, colonized, besieged people who are being carpet bombed who they should vote for or what their political ideologies should look like. So anyway, that's my rant about
Okay,
internal politics.
great rant. Thank you.
Next up is Citizen One. If you would unmute yourself, followed by Hisham, followed by Richard. Richard, thank you for your patience. So Citizen One, go ahead, please.
Yes, how many minutes do I have?
Just 2 minutes, but if you run over, if you're in the middle, that's okay. Go ahead, please.
Oh, okay, or I'll save my comments, the rest of my comments for a second round. From the river to the sea means that.
Oh, hold on, I'm sorry. Please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself. Sorry about that. That was a glitch. Go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. From the river to the sea means that historical Palestine needs to be de-Zionized. And that's what it fundamentally means. I'm always amazed that although while Black politicians are, of course, forced to defend Israel to keep their jobs, the Black grassroots, aside from Black intellectuals, have always understood that the Palestinians were engaged in an anti-colonial struggle. And that always amazes me because the Black grassroots doesn't need to have any of the details that white leftists often need to have about the Balfour Declaration and who Menachem Begin was and who Ben Gurion was and, all these other kind of facts. They get it, as does the Global South, because the Global South has been engaged in anti-colonial movements over the centuries. So they get it too. Gandhi, people can look up Gandhi's statement on Palestine. I don't have it right in front of me, but Gandhi said that in the face of overwhelming odds, from the Zionist invasion, nothing can be said about the forms of resistance of what he called Palestine's Arabs. The most important moral weapon that we leftists, but not only leftists, and the rest of the world can give the Palestinians, the most important moral weapon we can give them is to say that the Zionists did not invade Palestine non-violently. The Palestinians have no obligation to resist that invasion non-violently. Without sending the Palestinian people a single weapon, which would be illegal, I'm sure, in the West, the most important moral support we can give them is to say that they have the right to either non-violently or engaged in armed resistance. I have further comments after my suggested question for Nora. But my suggested question for Nora is that you should ask Norman Finkelstein if he's still a loyal opposition left Zionist for Israel. He has often been a vociferous critic of Israel, but only of the occupation, not against Zionism. And Chomsky's the same way. I've been criticizing Chomsky and Finkelstein for years against a lot of criticism against me. Chomsky and Finkelstein for years for their being left Zionist, against a lot of criticism from me because people think that they are left Zionist. Finkelstein once said, don't even talk about Zionists. He called BDS a cult. Chomsky called BDS hypocritical. So I would like to ask Nora to ask him the next time she interviews him if he's still a so-called left Zionist. Antebellum slave revolts, armed slave revolts, didn't morally invalidate that slavery was wrong and didn't invalidate the abolition movement. If anything, the slave revolts further invalidated slavery. I'm sorry, I just have some disparate notes here. We all know that Mandela and the ANC were called terrorists. All anti-colonial strugglers throughout history have been called terrorists. Hitler called the anti-Nazi underground terrorists. So, this is nothing new. No leftist imposed upon the Vietnamese that they have to only resist non-violently. They tried it, and it didn't work. And even Martin Luther King said that Nazism could probably not have been resisted non-violently. So I'm trying to see if I've gotten through my notes.
I think
I think we.
Last thing, very last thing, if I may. I spoke about the Black grassroots. So very last thing, people should go to kpfa.org and listen to Davy D's Hard Knock radio program this past Friday on October 27th. From 4 to 5 p.m., but you can find it by name there. Davy D's kpfa.org Hard Knock radio program, and there he had a guest who goes by the name of Conscious Lee from the Black grassroots. And he laid this all down the same way I would. He was not compromising about the Palestinians don't have a right to resist, engage in armed struggle. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. Yeah, I'm not really in touch with either Chomsky or Finkelstein, but I will keep that in mind if I talk to them. Anyway.
Okay. So next up is Hisham, followed by Richard. So Hisham, if you would mute yourself, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I have several questions, but first I want to ask Nora if they have information about what really happened when Hamas crossed the border. Okay. Now, I have people saying that Hamas massacred 1,400 innocent civilians, children, and women, and they're trying to just forget about the fact that the Israeli army itself said they lost 307 soldiers in the fight. Also, and this was in the chat also, there was interviews with 2 Israeli women who said that the Hamas people treated them very well. One of them actually asked for her permission to eat a banana, and the other one, they ate together, and they had an argument about whether it was Zero Coca-Cola or regular Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
So this doesn't strike me, as what's happening in the media. And I think we should, I'm really trying to find out what happened. Also about the killing of children. I think
that's right.
The myth that they cut the heads of children is not there.
Yeah.
But how about overall? Okay, what exactly happened? And also we should not forget, just like anybody looking at the films coming through, not most, but there were a lot of people, children crossing the border with them, men without arms, men with arms, and some news agencies said that there were men who took hostages, not hostages, they actually abducted, like the Israeli army abducts us in the West Bank. They arrest us, but we take hostages. Now, all of this also, to me, is tied to the religion of Hamas versus the religion of the Israelis. First of all, I'm Palestinian. I'm from Ramallah. I'm agnostic, and I have a very hard time with the religious people. But my thesis advisor, his name was Rakah, a Tunisian Jew, and he used to treat me like he said, and he did actually, like his son. Okay, we had very good relationship, and he told me that his family, he was a Torah scholar. He told me his family escaped Spain to Tunisia after the Inquisition, and he said in World War II, the king of Tunisia, he used to say the king of Tunisia, he did everything humanly possible, okay, to save the Jews from the Nazis when they were there. At the same time, and this has to do with religion, he told me that when they were living in Tunisia, if an Arab does an infraction with them, they had to answer it 10 times. And he said, this is our doctrine. This guy was a really religious person, very deep into it. So when we talk about Hamas, Yusuf probably will agree with me that the Quran does not order the Muslims to kill women and children.
Yeah.
And there's instruction from Abu Bakr and probably also from the Prophet that said, do not kill children, do not kill women, do not kill people in religious places. On the other hand, I met when last year I was in Jerusalem, and I went to the Wailing Wall. I think we call it the Wailing Wall. And I met with this religious person. I just basically enforced myself on him. He was doing prayer, wait for him till he finished the prayer. I want to talk to him to see what he says about peace. I said that because from 87 until the Oslo agreements, I think, or maybe 89 till the Oslo agreement, we had Jewish dialogue groups in Chicago. And we made very good friends. They used to come to my house, that our system, we'll eat together and they will discuss the thing. So I wanted to try my dialogue skills with him. And of course, he was very nice. Actually, he was very handsome, very nice man, and very beautiful, because we always had the idea that these people with the sideburns, you know, like these are the murderers.
Yeah.
So we had a good conversation, maybe for half an hour. But then he refused. Eventually, he refused my peace proposals for him. And he said, when the Messiah comes, he will take care of everything. He said, what do you mean? He said, he will take care of everything, which to me means kill, like the Torah says. Okay, the Torah says, kill the children, kill the women, kill the animals, kill the chicken, kill everybody that is there. Okay, Hamas doesn't have that. Okay, they have instructions, you know, that you only fight if you have to, and if they like lean towards peace, you have to accept peace. So what do you think, like, with this, the rise of religious people? I mean, it's obvious, like Israel now is becoming more religious.
Yeah.
And of course, like the Palestinians, I mean, we used to be mostly secular. Now a lot of Palestinians are religious.
Yeah.
So how do you see, like, first of all, what really happened, and how this religious, like, meanness, which is really embedded in the Jewish mind towards other people?
Yeah, thanks for that. I put a couple of links in the chat. One is to the story that we broke. Was it last week? Was it a year ago? Like, it was, I think it was last week, maybe 10 days ago, where you know, survivors of one of the kibbutz, you know, so-called massacres, says, and this is corroborated by other testimonies, that the Israelis killed the Israeli, again, this is like the Hannibal directive that I mentioned earlier, that Israelis killed their own soldiers and people in the kibbutz in just what looks like a complete, you know, just a bungle, if it wasn't so terrifying for people. But it really, I mean, it points to how Israel not only kills its own people, but then also like propagates these lies about Hamas coming in and beheading 40 Jewish babies. Of course, that never happened. Hamas coming in and raping women, you know, at the music festival. Every single lie that Israel has told has been, you know, circulated around and then eventually debunked. But it serves. What does it do? It serves to manufacture consent for the carpet bombing of Gaza. And over and over and over again, we're seeing these stories come out. You know, like there was an old woman who was taken captive. I'm going to try and find the link. Who's taken captive by Hamas, and she said that she was treated very gently, that they shared food, that there was a doctor who came and checked on her, that, you know, nobody hurt her. And she like shook, you know, there's a video of this woman and another woman getting released to the International Red Cross. And she, you know, turns and she shakes the hands of the Hamas resistance fighter and she says, Shalom. And this destroyed the narrative. I mean, this, like, Israel could not handle this. It was apparently her son said that Shin Bet officers tried to come and tell her what she could say before she gave the press conference, and she actually said, I don't belong to the state, and she told her truth anyway. Let me see if I can find this. Anyway, so there's that. And then in terms of the religious aspect, yeah, I mean, the whole, I mean, when you see these fighters, you know, and there is a doctrine that they have where they, I mean, like, the fact that, like, Israel can purport that these, you know, scary brown savage, you know, barbarians would rape all these women or behead all these babies. I mean, this goes against everything that I know about, especially like religious Muslim people. And not to mention the fact that it's just insanely racist and depraved. And again, it's meant to trigger this response in Israeli Jewish settlers, but also American Jews who have this idea that, you know, scary brown Muslim men are you know, around every corner wanting to rape and behead you. I can't find this. I'll get the link in a few minutes. But anyway, so, and then in terms of the Jewish religion, I mean, the Jewish traditions that I grew up with were very much in line with, you know, like, we take care of each other. We take care of our neighbors. We have suffered and we don't want anyone else to suffer. And therefore it's our responsibility, when we see injustice, to help stop it. And I think, you know, these like messianic fanatical settlers who are like interpreting the Bible in this crazy way, that even like Netanyahu yesterday in a press conference, he like invoked some very genocidal passage in the Bible. I mean, they're using it, right? They're like how they weaponize Jewish people and Jewish identity in order to prop up their fantasy of a nation state. They're weaponizing the Jewish religion and Jewish tradition. And so, yeah, I mean, there are Messianic Jews. My colleague David Sheen, who lives in Haifa, a wonderful anti-Zionist Jewish reporter.
Hello.
He does a lot of work on.
How's it going, Tabby?
Uh-oh. I'm gonna just mute that person on these Messianic Jewish movements and the fanatical settlers that are helping to propagate these like just horrific fanatical crimes.
Next up is Richard, followed by Kit, and then Sharon. So please, let's try. We're running out of time. Let's try to keep questions and comments short. So
Okay.
Go ahead, Richard. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for your presentation, Nora. One of the problems I've had with your presentation at this point, and discussion, I should say, is that it's been very abstract in the sense that it's been very much Israeli versus Palestinians. And to me, we need to bring it back home. For example, nothing has been discussed that I've heard, or very little, of what is happening here. Along that line, I have a sort of an aside, if you will, and one of my questions is, and this is not related, or it's tangentially related, is the media keeps talking in terms of innocent children and women, and I'm trying to figure out, well, given that we have children who participate in all manners of wars, well, given that the citizens of Israel are all, you know, once they become 18, I think that they're trained as, you know, for the military service. What does that really mean? And that's an aside. You know, I mean, that's the media. To me, that's the media defining how we see our world. If we keep saying in terms of innocence, this and that, I mean, that's just simply not really real. But the issue I really wanted to bring up is that for some 100 years now, the Jewish lobby, the Jewish has had a very powerful voice in communicating their issues, as opposed to the Palestinians. The Palestinians have had virtually no representation in the media, and I was wondering if maybe, how do we bring this home back to the people here in this country? And that's what really counts. You know, we can sit here and abstract all you want about Gaza and Israel, but really, how do we bring the politics back home? Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we have to bring this is the belly of the beast. This is, you know, without, without U.S. support financially and ideologically,
Right.
Palestinians wouldn't be where it is, where they are right now. And so, there are so many ways to look at that, and especially, it's very overwhelming. What can we do? We're in the Bay Area. We're, we have these completely impotent leaders. We have Gavin Newsom, going to Israel to, basically kickstart his presidential campaign, it looks. We have these just despicable people in Congress who are, just salivating over Israel's carpet bombing. But I think I think the old tactics are still valid in terms of well, this is the system we've got. And that's why I think, getting on the phone and leaving messages to whoever you can get in Congress and in the Senate and at the White House, and telling them that, you are sick of this. I think, hammering home that this is costing. These liberals are so, in a twitch about, but he's the lesser of two evils, and you still have to vote for Biden. I think that narrative has to be completely dismantled. I think that, if the lesser of two evils is carpet bombing an indigenous population, I'm sorry, but I think that argument is over. I think we have to start doing more local politics. My city council last week was the first and only city council in the country to pass a resolution condemning Israel's genocide on Gaza. That's fantastic. We need more like that. There's, I have friends who were at the Berkeley Unified School District meeting, when was it, last week, where crazy Zionists were organized, and they came to the meeting and they were yelling at the school district board to, basically punish any student who dared to protest against Israel's carpet bombing. And so we have to be ready for that. We have to organize. We have to be the ones to say absolutely not in our city, not on our dime. This is Berkeley, this is Berkeley, and they're capitulating to these fanatical Zionists who want to see Palestinians exterminated. And so we have to get more engaged that way. There are, direct actions at Pelosi's office all the time. There are these massive marches. There are, now there's something that I encourage everyone to check out on, if you use social media. It's called Palestine Action US. And it's a subsidiary of Palestine Action UK, which has been the most magnificent direct action group in the UK in a long time. They literally, it's not just, they're not just holding hands and protesting outside the Israeli weapons factories in the UK. They're literally shutting them down. They're scaling the walls. They're getting arrested. They're throwing red paint on things. They're actually dismantling some of the technological, I'm not an engineer, but things on top of the roofs that make the, company computer servers work. They're dismantling those to make it impossible for the factory to manufacture weapons. And so just in the past week or so, Palestine Action US was born, and they're already doing similar actions against Elbit weapons manufacturing, factories and headquarters on the East Coast. So things, it's essential that we get activated. It's essential that we bring it back home. We are subsidizing Israel's genocide of Palestinians while people down the street from us don't have a place to live, while the homeless population is expanding, while there are wildfires, across our state all the time, while we can't get decent healthcare, while we can't get decent infrastructure, while our schools, my kid goes to a West Contra Costa County Public School, and you know, it's great and we love it, and it is insanely underfunded. I mean, we have to keep like, you know, making these connections. What we fund over there is being taken out of our pockets. This is not, you know, I don't have to explain this to you. You guys already know this, but it's important to communicate this to elected officials, whether they're in your city council or your school board, or whether it's Gavin Newsom. I mean, this is going to cost Joe Biden the election. You know, he's ridden on the backs of people of color in this country, and people are not going to take it anymore. They're not going to do the bidding anymore for the Democratic Party, and I think that leaves a huge opportunity for us on the left to, you know, to I don't know, somehow seize on that somehow.
Okay. Nora actually has to leave. She has another engagement.
I do.
In about, can we do 2 more quick questions and wrap
I can
this
say
up? And
another
then
5 minutes.
Okay. And then what I'm going to do is at the end, I will leave time for people to make announcements concerning actions in support of Palestine. So we'll do that before we sign off.
Maybe we can do the 2 questions, one after the next, and then I'll answer them both.
Okay, so let's try to keep those short. Kit, if you would go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Nora, for speaking and addressing our questions here. Yeah, I can be quick. You answered a lot of my questions in the previous your previous statement, because of, you know, bringing it back home is what we can do, and contacting our representatives. But can you talk about like the boycotts that are being done? I know that Clorox is one. It's based in Oakland. Nestle's is another. They've got many subsidiaries that people aren't aware of. And notorious Nestle just keeps doing horrible things throughout the world. And Halloween's coming up. So can you talk about that? And then do you have any recommendations for who to vote for the president, who would be the chief of our you know, empire? And then what are you finding among oh gosh, libertarians? What are they saying about this? Thank you.
Okay, Sharon, if you would go ahead and ask your question.
I have 2 points to make. One is thank you, Nora, and kudos to whoever in Richmond, California, put that on the city council.
Yeah,
that was fabulous, and we need to do more of that. And I totally agree. All politics is local. Yeah. But I wanted to raise, which something else you touched on, I think, at the beginning of what your remarks. Words matter. So I maintain that we should not use the word Holocaust. We should say Nazi genocide, because the Holocaust, even though the term Holocaust has been used in the past to describe different genocides, it has been for many, many decades co-opted by the Zionists to mean the 6 million Jews who were murdered, when in fact, probably close to 50 million Europeans lost their lives fighting and most of them civilians, fighting the Nazis. I think we should not use the term the Jewish people. There's no such thing. It's an ideological construct. Yeah. There are Jewish people, there are American Jews, et cetera, et cetera. There are Chinese Jews, there are Israeli Jews. There's no the Jewish people. Yeah. And then finally, when we talk about anti-Semitism, the Zionists have turned it into anything that's anti-Zionist is anti-Semitic, including recently in the New York Times, alleging that because China is supporting the Palestinians, there's been this huge uptick in anti-Semitism on the internet in China, which is, as far as I can tell, all the quotes that I've seen, they're anti-Zionist.
Right. Thank you for both of those. Yeah, I just put a link in the chat to a video that I made almost exactly 2 years ago about why anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. And it goes into the history and how it's being weaponized to further Zionist policy. So please check that out. It's about it's like 22-minute video. It's great. And yeah, words matter. I really appreciate that. And the other thing was boycotts. I also put a link to bdsmovement.net, which is the kind of hub of the Palestinian-led boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign around the world. And they have growing and changing lists of boycottable products. And now I'm forgetting the other point from
you don't have to comment on presidential campaign.
Oh, presidential campaign
okay.
And the libertarians. That's right.
Yeah.
The libertarians are enemies. So I don't trust them.
We'll do another session on that. Okay.
But I mean, at this point, it's like, this is American empire. You can't put a Band-Aid on a breaking dam. But we can do a lot locally. So just whatever you can do. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much, Nora, for taking time out of your extremely busy schedule to speak with us today.
Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Nebo Proctor Marxist Library receives no corporate funding, nor do we have any paid staff. We rely on the support of working class folks that share our commitment to the socialist legacy of Karl Marx. We continue to need funds to meet necessary expenses, since we can no longer pass the hat at our in-person forums. Please send contributions to our treasurer, either online via PayPal or by check. The PayPal ID is ICSS Sunday, SUNDAY, @yahoo.com, and the name is Richard Fallenbaum. And checks may be made out to Richard Fallenbaum and sent to him at 1225 Nielsen Street, Berkeley, California, 94706. Fallenbaum is spelled Fallenbaum. To donate directly to the Marxist Library, send a check to the Nebo Proctor Marxist Library at 6501 Telegraph Avenue, Oakland, California, 94609, or directly or donate online at www.paypal.me/npml. For information, write to npml at marxistlibr.org, and the website is marxistlibr.org.